FIFA has announced tripling the Women's World Cup prize money for the upcoming summer and plans to have equal prize money by 2027. So, let's talk about it. FIFA President Infantino was speaking at the organization's Congress in Rwanda, opened his statement by saying FIFA is increasing the prize money for the 2023 Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand to $110 million. This is more than triple than what it was back in 2019. The total purse of that World Cup, which was held in France, was a $30 million, with the winner's prize being a very small and tiny $4 million. Now, FIFA hasn't announced the exact breakdown of those $110 million, and they haven't exactly said what the prize money is going to be, but what we do know so far is that 31 million of that is going to preparation funds and 11 million of that is going to club benefits, both of which remarkably bigger than what they were back in 2019. FIFA also announced that they are aiming for parity for the men's and the women's tournaments in 2026 and 2027 respectively. It's also important to remember and know that FIFA is a non-profit organization and uses that revenue to put back into the sport. So really their entire job is to generate that money, generate that revenue, not for profit, but rather for investment into that sport and growing numbers into that sport. And so for them, achieving those high prizes and achieving those equality numbers between the men's and the women's tournaments are very, very achievable. And in some ways, they're not really under many restrictions. It was revealed post-Qatar World Cup that FIFA right now are sitting on a $4 billion cash reserves. That's $4 billion, which is a lot more money to equalize the 2023 World Cup to the 2022 World Cup prize money if FIFA really wanted to. So why is it being pushed into the next World Cup? Well, it's FIFA. So is it really surprising to see them delay this conversation and push the conversation of equal prize money? Not really, but I think what we are seeing right now is a good first step. Baby steps. With FIFA, you gotta appreciate the baby steps at this point. This announcement obviously does not come with some harsh criticism of individuals that don't know the sport and don't watch the sport and don't necessarily keep up with the numbers and the stats, but using the whole conversation of the Women's World Cup doesn't generate as much viewership as the Men's World Cup. For one, that's false, but for two, it doesn't really matter in this conversation because, again, FIFA is a non-profit organization and must put in and reinvest whatever revenue they get. The 2019 did actually have and bring in more viewership on certain broadcasters than the Men's World Cup. For example, looking at Fox Sports, who released their numbers following the World Cup, it was not only revealed that the 2019 Women's World Cup had more average viewership and had a much higher peak viewership than the 2000 Men's World Cup had. And the final, which was against the United States and the Netherlands, was the most watched soccer match on English language television in the United States. So when it comes to comparing viewership and looking at which actually generated more viewership, which actually hit more numbers, it's important to recognize that some broadcasters are going to do a lot better when it comes to the Men's World Cup, and some others are going to do a lot better when it comes to the Women's World Cup. It also depends on how much the broadcasting is carrying. Are they doing pre-game analysis? Are they doing mid-game analysis? What does that package come with? How high is that level of broadcasting? How many games are they broadcasting? So it's really important to actually dig deep into these conversations, not just blindly say, well, the Men's World Cup is bringing in more viewership, because you look at Fox Sports, that's certainly not the case. Another important aspect of revenue is that often individuals compare what the final revenue is. And so, for example, the Men's World Cup had $2 invested in it and made $40. The Women's World Cup had $1 invested in it and made $10. What you see on the media then is that people are saying, well, the Men's World Cup made $40 compared to the Women's $10. That is very irrelevant if you don't actually know what the start investment was. What was the initial money that was put in? $2 is frankly twice the amount as the $1. The Men's World Cup, in other words, had twice the amount, the investment, that the Women's World Cup. So yes, we can look at viewership and yes, we can look at those end numbers, but it's also good and important to look at these numbers beforehand and these initial numbers that are going in. Otherwise, those final numbers don't really make. So using that conversation to combat against this announcement is just simply wrong and simply not correct. Another important point is that this announcement actually benefits some men's national teams. The U.S. Soccer Federation, for example, has a deal that prize money for both the men's and the women's World Cup go into a pool, and that pool is then shared with the prize money. And so for the men now, they're likely going to get more money because that pool is going to get more money from this Women's World Cup. So for some of these teams or for some of these federations that have deals like this when it comes to pool sharing, it benefits the men's teams as well. And even though I don't have the exact breakdown of what the women's national teams will make now in the round of 16 in the quarterfinals X, Y, and Z, I can almost 100% guarantee that the US women's national team is going to walk away with a lot more than $4 million, which was their entire prize money last World Cup. This is regardless of which stage they reach to this year. It could be the round of 16, it could be just in the group stages, and they're likely going to walk away with more than $4 million. I wouldn't be surprised to see federations from now on to the World Cup actually strike some of these deals of pool sharing and prize money sharing, because it means that overall the federation is going to have more money to work with when it comes to redistributing between the two. Speaking of which, we are still in this equal pay, equal play fight. We're still in this fight of equity and a lot of federations moving into the World Cup. There's so many different premises for this conversation, but number one has to be the laborers' rights argument. At the end of the day, the players are playing the same exact sport. They're dedicating just as much time on the field, off the field, training, getting better. They're playing on the same pitch. They're playing with the same size ball. They're playing for just as long on the pitch. The idea is pretty simple here. And this is reflected in so many systems, right? In a nutshell, if you're doing the same job, you're likely going to be getting the same pay, or at least similar to the same pay of your partner who's doing the exact same job. For us to see that the 2018 Men's World Cup winners walking away with $38 million compared to the $4 million that the U.S. women's national team walked away with, I think that's just ludicrous, and it's a really embarrassing conversation to even sit and have. With this new announcement, obviously, we're not going to be getting the exact same prize money, but there's now an argument of the expressive power. Back in 2017, the president of the Norwegian Players Association said that, isn't it a cool idea, and wouldn't it be a good signal if we did things equally? The expressive power in terms of it sends the message, if you're a female footballer, you're no less than your male footballer. You're just as professional and you're just as valued in your craft. It adds that respected tag that the game has lacked for a bit. It adds that expressive power of you've got what you should deserve, again, in some aspect. Not quite there just yet. And even though we are really excited to see what that prize money is going to be, and I'm very much looking forward to see that prize money actually hit equally in the 2027-2026 World Cups, but in some ways, I don't want to celebrate too hard because it feels like a duty of reparation of what FIFA's doing right now. The case of the Lionesses is one of the biggest and most prominent ones, is they were banned from playing football for 50 years. And as a federation, as a complete body of a football organization, everybody should be working to repair those horrible decisions that was made 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. Football associations need to start looking into these pay equities. They need to start looking into possibly hitting deals of sharing and pool sharing of prize money. And most importantly, if you're not talking about this equal play, equal pay conversation, then I'm afraid you're a little bit late to the party. But two, that's going to cause some serious consequences moving forward into what has been a sport that's been booming and arguably the fastest growing sport in the entire world right now. It's good to see that FIFA's finally stepping up. Again, I don't want to get too excited with what the prize money is going to be or how the whole distribution is going to end up looking like. This is a step in the right direction. This is a step in where the prize money should be looking like. And most importantly, this is a step to finally recognizing or finally giving a little bit of what these players deserve in terms of profession and respect and the accommodations that they need to thrive in a World Cup environment. It's going to be interesting to see how federations again hustle around probably a pool sharing, prize money sharing deal, because hey, that's more money coming in for them, and who would say no to that? So if that happens, I called it first. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions. I want to hear it all. Obviously, this 110 million is very far away from the 440 million that the men's had. Like I mentioned, it could have been equaled now, considering that FIFA does have a $4 billion reserve.